Hi, everyone. David Aragona and Mike Beer here taking a look at the DRF Thursday race of the day. We're going to go down to Kentucky for this one. Kentucky Downs kicking off their meet at the end of August this month, and Thursday is their first day, and their feature on that Thursday card is the Tapit Stakes. This one going as race 10, the mile and 70-yard distance for turf horses that have not won a sweepstakes so far in 2025. So this is a restricted race, but even it being a restricted stakes, it's offering a $500,000 purse. Get used to that at Kentucky Downs, big purses for races that maybe aren't always aligned with their grades or levels. And Mike, as the big purse will do in horse racing, a large field's been attracted for this one, and a tough race to handicap. That will be a theme at Kentucky Downs this year.
You said that one right. Yeah, big purses lead to big fields, and you got a huge one here. There's a lot of talent in this race too, David. Just a wide open kind of a race here where you just want to sort of wait and probably see where all the wagering settles first before you decide where you're actually going to go.
Yeah, Mike, look, as a morning line maker, Kentucky Downs is the last place I'd ever want to make a morning line for. But I mean, sitting in this chair, I will, nitpick a little bit because we have to handicap this race and you want to have an idea of what fair prices are. If I were making a line for this race, I would have made Lagynos the favorite. I mean, he just seems like the horse to beat on class here. But I would imagine the money's going to be somewhat spread around because there are a lot of horses to make cases for in this spot.
Yeah, it's just a wide open race. I'm with you. I mean, Lagynos seems like he's got, plenty of class here. This is certainly, if nothing else, it's a pretty significant step down for him based on the races that he's been running in. I don't know if post position even matters there, David. I don't know what matters at Kentucky Downs, but, maybe drawing the far outside doesn't help him.
Let's take a look at the Timeform US Pace Projector for this race to see if it helps us a little bit project what kind of trips these horses might get. And just feel like there's a fair amount of speed in here, Mike. I mean, the number 12, Nelson Avenue, I know he rated it in his most recent start, but he's certainly quick enough to make the front. Track Phantom has shown a lot of speed on the dirt. He'll be trying the turf for the first time in this race. Astronomer wants to be forward. When Paros runs well, he's more forwardly placed. So I could see this pace heating up a little bit just as a function of the fact that it's such a large field.
Yeah, I think this pace is probably going to be pretty solid. The surface switchers or the horses, and that they're not all surface switchers, but the horses who have predominant dirt form will probably be forward in here. I mean, a horse who probably will also be up close, David, the number 3, 911 Turbo. I mean, he was the pace setter in this race last year, and he ran really well, and he's back in here. He tends to be, forwardly placed in his races. I don't know. I feel like this pace will be pretty quick.
Let's go through this large field from the rail out, beginning with the number 1 Paros, a horse that was in great form when he was first claimed by these connections last summer at Saratoga, picked up for $40,000. He won 4 in a row, but Mike, his form really tailed off over the winter into the beginning of this year. And now he's coming back off a layoff, just trying to get back on track.
Yeah, the form, it's worth noting, the form that he was in, it was really good. It tailed off when they tried stepping him up into much tougher races. And He just really wasn't competitive with horses like that. And I know this is not a graded stakes race, but this is a really tough field for a horse like Paros, who has run some good races. And listen, he's never run a Kentucky Downs before. You don't know how he's going to handle it. And maybe he'll be some kind of big price in here, David. But I didn't like his races when they moved him up in class.
I did find this DRF formulator fact for trainer Mike Maker, and believe me, Kentucky Downs, when you look up the stats, it's a tough place to win at because a lot of trainers have poor stats, but you assume Mike Maker wins a lot of stakes races in Kentucky on the turf. Not the case. Over the past 5 years at Kentucky Downs in stakes races, he is 2 for 72, 3% with a 45-cent ROI. We'll see how short a price Paros is. The number 2, Tapit Shoes, is going to be a big price in this race, Mike. And he's a horse that actually has some form that gives him a bit of a chance in here. I mean, he ran a 91 buyer, winning against high-level allowance competition 2 back. And then last time in that Kentucky Downs preview Turf Cup, he faced some pretty good horses such as Highway Robber and Anglophile. Got a little steady back coming to the quarter pole, stayed on at the end. I wonder if he's good enough to beat a field like this, but I'm not going to be surprised when he outruns his odds.
Yeah, I agree. If he's a big price, I'm not going to knock this horse. He's got, when I first started looking at him, David, I felt like maybe he's better on the all-weather surface than he is on turf, but he's run fine on the grass. I'm not going to sit here and think that, pigeonhole him as a horse who can't handle turf as well as the other surfaces. I think that he can, and he'll be a big price in here.
As you mentioned, the number 3, 911 Turbo, was barely beaten in this race last year, finishing second against 8 rivals. Much bigger field this year, and probably a tougher field that he'll be facing here. And also a question as to what form he's in since last year, Mike, because he's been really up and down, inconsistent. He came off the layoff in the Wicker Stakes at Del Mar recently. We'll take a look at the stretch run of that race, and he makes a big run on the outside to get up for third. To me, it's one of these races, Mike, where you look at it on paper and then you watch the replay, and the replay isn't quite as impressive as what you expected because he's just very one pace through the late stages. Astronomer also highlighted it here. He finished 5th in this spot. This is 2 starts back in Astronomer's PPs. But Mike, 911 Turbo certainly has a chance to move forward second off the layoff from the start.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, he's second off the layoff this year. Last year when he ran so well here, he was third off the layoff. So we'll see if it, makes any kind of a difference. I feel like there were, his form does look a little in and out, but I think there were pretty easy excuses to be made for some of his poor performances towards the end of last year. There was a really boggy turf course at Hawthorne, another soft turf course at Colonial, and he just doesn't seem like he acts quite as well on those. But if he gets firm turf and he gets the right kind of a trip, he can certainly go with these horses. And I do think, listen, he's already run really well on this turf course, and I think that's a huge advantage. I'm always looking for horses who have already proven that they can run well here, because I've seen too many horses come to Kentucky Downs who look good and be total no-shows.
The number 4, Sherlock's Jewel, was one of 2 Shug McGahee trainees in this race, likely to be the much bigger price of the 2. And Mike, you might just glance at his form on paper and think that he's really gone the wrong way in his last couple of starts, but I think you can make some real excuses for those last couple of losses. I mean, the poker, he never saw the inside. That was a time in early June on the inner turf course. The rails were set down to 0, and you really wanted to save ground, be forward over that course. He was neither of those things, so I can make an excuse for that performance. And last time at Woodbine, he did have traffic in the very late stages. I don't know how much that cost him, but prior to that, he was just chasing 4 wide with no cover. That is the opposite kind of trip that this horse needs. And I think Luan Machado taking over might be a really good fit for this horse, because he's the kind that wants to get held up and produce one run.
Agreed. And he's another one who's already run pretty well here at Kentucky Downs. So he's got that going for him too. I hated the trip that he got last time at Woodbine. He had absolutely no chance in the poker. Not only was he always on the outside, a race where they were crawling early and flying late in that race, and he's trying to pass horses, forget about it. His prior race, the win there at Aqueduct, he ran really well that day.
Yeah, when I went through this field in chronological order, I got to this horse and thought, oh, this is going to be a good pick in this race, and then kept going. It gets tougher and tougher and tougher. Couldn't quite put him on top, but I'll include him later. The number 5, Mountain Bear. He's a horse that has plenty of class lines going back over the past couple of seasons, Mike. He used to be in Aidan O'Brien's barn. He ran well overseas, including when he came to the U.S., finishing second in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf at the end of 2023. Feels like he hasn't really gone on since his 3-year-old season. He ran well in a couple starts last year, particularly the Turf Mile at Keeneland at the end of last season. But since switching into Wesley Ward's stable this year, I think both of his performances have just been a little bit disappointing.
I agree with you. I'm a fan of this horse too. And I really, even before the Turf Mile at Keeneland last October, where I did think he ran well that day, I liked a couple of his final races over in Ireland before they shipped him over here too. I thought he ran really well in those races. His first 2 starts so far this year, they're not great. We'll see how much he can rebound here. He is a new gelding for this race, apparently. And, maybe he'll really like this sort of, European kind of turf horse that he gets to run over at Kentucky Downs.
The number 6, Multitask, is a horse searching for his 3rd victory in a row. He's gone through his allowance conditions in his last couple of starts at Churchill Downs and Ellis, so they're going to try to step him up in class here, Mike. I believe he was entered at Ellis Park in one of those preview stakes races. I guess they scratched out of there, and they're going to run here instead. I like his progression recently. I'm just not sure he can improve enough to beat a field like this, because this is not an easy stakes race.
I don't think they found the right field for him here, but I do respect the fact that his form right now, it's good, and maybe it's just going to continue to get better. I mean, and he obviously handled the switch over to turf here recently as well. And listen, if you're going to take a shot with a horse in a race like this, you might as well do it while they're in really good form. He's in really good form.
The number 7, Cameo Performance, obviously one of the major players in this race. He's a horse whose form has been a little bit inconsistent over the past year or so, Mike, but when he's on and when he runs his race, he's good enough to beat a field like this, and we saw his good efforts 2 and 3 back, particularly in that Mervyn Nunes Memorial at Fairgrounds, where he made a big run. I know that race was won by a long shot, but there was some good horses in that race, and he beat them to finish in the trifecta that day, was not disgraced in a blanket finish in the Turf Classic against Grade 1 company after that. His last last race in the poker, Mike, I thought was a little bit disappointing because he did save ground. The pace was against him, but I just wanted to see him do a little more running in the stretch.
I agree. I've actually been a little disappointed in each of his last two starts. I know his Turf Classic two-back, it wasn't terrible, but I didn't think it was great either, and I didn't have a lot of excuses to offer up for him that day. I just thought he took another step backward last time. We'll see what he can do. He's still I like him as a horse overall, David. I just don't like his recent form, and I guess we'll see. They have him 9-2 on the line. I don't know if he's going to be that price, but I would want a pretty big price if I was going to go back to him.
And I will point out, those looking to make an excuse for his prior Kentucky Downs race where there's a big trouble line in his comments in the racing form. He didn't have trouble in that Nashville Derby, so I'm not exactly sure what that's referring to. The number 8 Ohana Honor is one of the classiest horses in this race when he's on his game. And Mike, going back to the middle of 2024, almost forgot how good this horse got. I mean, he was second to Silver Knot in the Man of War, finishing ahead of Nation's Pride in that spot. They came back into Manhattan, which might have been one of the toughest turf races that they ran all year in the United States last season. And he was right there at the end with Measured Time and Nation's Pride, Far Bridge. Now, obviously, after that, he went the wrong way a little bit, didn't show up in the Bowling Green, and then was a total no-show in the Sycamore. But he's been given a lot of time since then. I watched one of his recent workouts at Saratoga where he outworked his stablemate Limited Liability. So it appears that he might be coming back into this race in good form, and I actually don't mind him turning back in distance a little bit.
I don't either. Yeah, he's a horse I had forgotten about too. And as you were mentioning, those two big races that he ran when they sort of stretched him out a little bit more last year, the Manhattan too. I mean, he was, dead heating with Farbridge in that race, and he got shuffled back around the final turn of that race too. I mean, it seems to me like he was going to clearly be second in that race if he didn't have the trouble. So I don't know. I like some of this horse's races a lot. I also really respect his versatility as far as running style goes, because he can run from well off the pace, but he can also be more forward if they're not going fast.
And Sugar McGee, he has great stats off layoffs like this in turf routes. The number 9 Quatrocento is a horse who is in good form recently. He's got a string of 90-plus buyers coming into this race, all against Allowance Company, though, and he'll be stepping up into Stakes Company for the first time here, Mike. His performance two-back when he won at Ellis was very visually impressive. Last time out, he did lose as an odds-on favorite. I know the pace looks really fast, but I mean, they ran the final time at 1:38 for a mile and 16, so they just ran fast every step of the way, and I don't love the horse that beat him in that spot.
I agree. I mean, to me, when I watched that race back, he had no excuse in there at a really short price. He got a really good trip. He had first run on the horse that beat him in there, and he just really was no match for that horse at the end. He was really disappointed because this is a horse who I actually have a little bit of a thing for. You mentioned his win, Tubeck. He was so impressive winning that race. He'd also finished first in a race early this year at Tampa where he was disqualified, and he ran huge that day too. I mean, he's got a huge kick in him when things go his way. He's just really inconsistent and really hard to trust, but maybe he'll be a huge price in here.
The number 10 Astronomer doesn't win that often, but he does make sense in this race, Mike, off his recent form. He was fifth in that replay of the Wicker that we showed earlier for 911 Turbo. He's actually run back since then, Astronomer, and he was a decent second behind Final Boss. He was actually fourth in that Wicker and came back to beat Astronomer, finished one spot ahead of him once again in an allowance race at Del Mar. He's just pretty consistent. He handles distances like this. He could be placed up pretty close to the pace, and he might be the kind of horse that actually drifts up a little bit from that 8-1 morning line, because there's nothing so appealing about him that's going to draw on a ton of support.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, listen, he hasn't won a race in 2 years, but in that time frame with all the losses, I mean, I think he's been beaten less than a length in 3 graded stakes races out in Southern California. So his resume could actually, it's not that far away from being way stronger than it is on paper.
The number 11 Track Phantom will be trying the turf for the first time in this race. This is a horse that was on the Kentucky Derby trail back in 2024. Never really developed after the Kentucky Derby, and he's been a big disappointment earlier this year. So it feels like they're just trying grass out of desperation now, Mike.
That's what I don't like about it. They're making the surface switch at a time where it feels like it's just, sort of maybe something to try to wake this horse up because his form's gone the wrong way. He actually has enough turf pedigree to consider him, but his recent form is not good.
Yeah, we got a string of horses right here with very little turf experience as we move on to the number 12, Nelson Avenue, who's never won on the grass, but got back on it for the first time in a long time in his last race. We'll take a look at the replay of the stretch run of this high-level allowance optional claimer at Saratoga, and he gets pretty close to a good horse at the end in Big Everest. Now, Nelson Avenue Frankie Dettori decided to rate him in the early stages of this race, which did afford his the horse that turned out to be his main rival, Big Everest, an easy lead. And when Big Everest gets an easy lead, he's almost impossible to pass. Nelson Avenue does make a good run at him in the late stages, but once this horse showed that he could rate Mike, he got a really good trip in that race. Hard to envision him getting a better trip in this spot.
That's how I looked at him too. And I hear what you're saying too. He made it close with a pretty good horse in Big Everest, but Big Everest is the kind of horse who makes it close with just about everyone, no matter what kind of race it is. I don't know, man. He ran fine in there. I'm not a huge fan of his overall. I don't even like him that much as a dirt horse, and I certainly couldn't sit here and say I like him more as a turf horse.
Number 13, Steel Sunshine, is a pretty fascinating horse because he was on dirt for the entirety of his career following his debut. His debut came on the grass. I went back and watched that race. He got a crazy ride and trip in that race, but they never tried the turf again until his most recent start at Gulfstream Park back in June. And we'll take a look at the stretch run of that race. And Mike, this horse does have some turf pedigree, so I get why they went back to it and looked like he handled the turf just fine. And you might want to dismiss this because it's a race down at Gulfstream. The turf racing isn't that tough there in the middle of June, but this was a good field. I mean, the winner, Beach Gold, came back to win a tough stakes race at Ellis, improving his buyer up to a 97. The fourth place finish for Conman came back to win, improving his buyer at Saratoga. And this was a pretty slow-paced race, and Steel Sunshine still made a big run into it. And you go back to his dirt form, and he was knocking heads against some of the best dirt horses in the country over the past couple of years. So he fits her from a class standpoint, and he's going to appreciate any pace that develops.
Yeah, he's always been an underrated dirt horse, and one, too, that, it feels like his running style, because he can be so badly compromised in some of those dirt races because he lacks speed. It's not as much of a detriment to him on this surface, that's for sure. And like you, I just thought he ran really well when they switched him back to turf last time. I don't know how he's going to handle the step up in class. I don't know how he's going to handle Kentucky Downs, because a lot of horses just won't run their race there, but he's supposed to be a big price.
The number 14, Lagynos, I kind of view him as the horse to beat, Mike. I mean, this is a horse that, we've talked about him a bunch. I was chasing him all through the early portion of this year. I thought he got a bad trip back in, I think it was the opening verse. And I mean, after that, he was just picking up some minor awards in races. I thought Flavian actually gave him a really good ride too back in the Wise Dan, just wasn't quite good enough against Brilliant Birdie and some nice horses. And the last time in the 4-star Dave, they took a shot in the grade 1. He wasn't good enough, but he also got a trip that just gave him no chance.
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't be too hard on him for that one. He's probably, and actually, he actually was still in the mix there mid-stretch of that race too, even with that trip. But he just, faded at the end of that race. His prior, 5 or 6 starts on the grass, if he runs them here, it's just going to make him really tough in this race. He's another horse who's already run really well here at Kentucky Downs. I know that the one race there where they tried to stretch him all the way out in the Nashville Derby, that's not a great performance, but he does not want to go that far. So you cannot hold that race against him, at least in my opinion. He just makes a ton of sense here. I'm with you. I don't think you're going to get 8-1 on him here. At least you shouldn't get 8-1 on him in here. We'll see what kind of price he settles at, but this is a good spot for this horse.
Two also eligibles entered in this race, Mike. They both are going to be big prices. Noise is Off's got some races that make him a little bit interesting. The other horse is switching back to the turf for the first time in a long time. I couldn't quite get there with either of them, so I don't know if you had thoughts about the A's.
I mean, I couldn't see the 16 being around. Noise is Off I would just point out again, a horse who's run twice at Kentucky Downs already, and he's run really well both times.
Well, I don't know if I mentioned earlier, the beginning of this video was like 20 minutes ago now, so I'll just say it again if I didn't earlier. Free PPs available for this race if you go to the Race of the Day page at DRF.com, with it being the Thursday race of the day, if you want to handicap this race along with the analysis that Mike and I just went through. Let's go to our picks for this Tapit Stakes, Mike, and I agree with you that the number 14 Lagynos is the horse to beat. I don't think he's going to be a great price in here, but I view him as the most likely winner.
I got him on top. I agree. I just like the spot from the other horse for me was 911 Turbo, who I really like his form overall, and I just really appreciate the fact that he's already run well here at Kentucky Downs.
Yeah, I saw a ton of interesting horses in this race. I mean, the number 4, Sherlock's Jewel, I mentioned earlier. I've got him in there. I couldn't quite pull the trigger. I think Ohana Otter makes a lot of sense if he gets back to form. I put the number 13, Steel Sunshine, on top. He's going to need pace, but I thought his return to turf last time was a deceptively strong effort. And if they do go quickly up front, he'll be finishing best of all at the end. 13, 8, 14, 4 for me, and 14, 3, 5, 9 for Mike in the DRF Thursday race of the day, the Tapit Stakes at Kentucky Downs. Good luck for playing the races later this week.